Suddenly, the injury bug has bitten the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they made a slew of roster moves on Tuesday. Hunter and I are going to break all those down and more right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Patrick Damp. You can follow me across all social media platforms at Synonym for Wet. Joined as always by the one and only Hunter Hodes. You can follow him on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can give our show's Twitter account a follow at LO_Penguins. And you can also find us on Instagram at LockedOn_Penguins. Of course, as always, we appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. So don't forget that we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. And if you follow us on YouTube, make sure you've hit that notification button. That way you can be among the first to know when we drop our daily Monday through Friday episodes. Before we get going today, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com, and you could win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. More on them later. Well, Hunter, this kind of came out of nowhere on Tuesday evening. We had wrapped up our show. We had talked about the disastrous effort against the Montreal Canadiens. No, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Got my Canadian teams mixed up there. Who among us, am I right? But anyway, essentially, all of a sudden, the Penguins are just wrecked with injuries, and they made a bunch of roster moves, including calling up Danton Heinen, Ryan Graves, and Sergei Murashov. So, is the Sergei Murashov era about to begin? We don't quite know yet, but we will say this. This is how everything shook out, according to the Penguins PR Twitter account. Justin Brazeau is out a minimum of 4 weeks with an upper body injury. Noel Acciari is out a minimum of 3 weeks with an upper body injury as well. And Tristan Jarry will miss at least 3 weeks with a lower body injury. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the injury bug has come for the Penguins. But as it often does in the NHL, this presents an opportunity for quite a few players. Let's start with the skaters, and then we will get to the big one in Sergei Murashov. Danton Heinen and Ryan Graves have done pretty well at the AHL level, as we've expected and hoped that they would. So this is an opportunity for them who did not make the team out of camp to make their mark on the NHL roster and solidify a spot. So I'm curious to see what these two do, because the other thing that I forgot to mention is they did send Owen Pickering back down to Wilkes-Barre Scranton. So this is a huge opportunity for these group of players to make their mark in what has been a pretty competitive organization so far this season.
Right, and we do have to see if Ryan Graves is even going to get into the lineup. I mean, he's at least going to be with the team, but I'm not sure that he is still going to get minutes. We'll have to see. But to his credit, you're right, Pat. He did play well down in Wilkes-Barre to start the season. He's actually producing, which, hey, we'll take that. 1 goal, 7 points in 10 games. But again, it's also only the AHL. It doesn't take away from how much he struggled with the Penguins these last few years. So, again, that success in the AHL, it's great. I just don't expect it to carry over to the NHL. I've been wrong before, though, but we've seen his sample size with the Penguins. It's not great, but I do have to give him credit for at least doing well down there. I also will give credit to Danton Heinen. He's been very good for Wilkes-Barre. He's been their best player so far. 5 goals, 14 points in 10 games, skater-wise, that is. Skater-wise, he has been their best player. It's obvious that he is too good for the AHL. I mean, he's been an NHL player for quite a long time. He's going to have an opportunity to make his mark here if he gets into the lineup. Remember, Pat, Kevin Hayes is also working his way back. He was getting a lot of time with the fourth line during practice. I was up in Cranberry today watching them practice. Philip Hollander was also at practice, but he did leave early. Not really much of an update from DMUs after. So if Hollander is also a bit banged up, you're going to see one of Heinen or, Kevin Hayes go in there. Honestly, now that Achari is out for a few weeks. Kevin Hayes is probably going to take that spot anyway. People are going to have to be prepped for one or both of these players to play in games going forward. I know Avery Hayes didn't get called up. Tristan Bros didn't call up, but it's a process. I think both of those players, or at least one of them, are going to be up later on this season. They're off to good starts, but you don't want to rush these young players. They're going to get opportunities, though. But I think Kevin Hayes is going to be back very shortly. Danton Heinen is probably going to be back in the lineup. And these will be good opportunities for them to, at least for the Penguins, Pat, potentially see what value they have going into the trade deadline later this year. Heinen and Hayes, both on expiring contracts. If the Penguins can get anything for them, they would obviously very much want to do that because they have all these young players in Wilkes-Barre still that are coming. They have other players that are already up here, like Koivunen, like Kindle. McGroarty is going to hopefully be up here later this year. So it is at least an opportunity for them to at least assess the value that Hayes and Heinen have. And I actually thought Hayes was mostly okay last year. I don't need him playing over some of the young kids, but for now, I think I'm fine with him playing just because someone like Achari is out of the lineup, for example. But congratulations to Sergei Murashov, man. This is very well deserved. AHL goaltender of the month for October. He was 5-1 during that month. Overall, Pat, this season, he is 5-2. And these numbers I'm about to say, man, these are ridiculous. .931 save percentage, 1.73 goals against average. He is tearing up the AHL so far. He has tore up every league that he has played in so far. This is a well-deserved call-up, and I am curious to see what Dan Muse does. Does he do a 1A, 1B still? Does he give Shilovs more of the starts? Hell, if Murashov has a good start, does he ride him a little bit more? All options, I think, are on the table.
Right. And before I get into Murashov, because I was thinking about stepping in, but you were cooking with gas there, and I'm not one to get in your way for that. So I wanted to let you run in the field as long as you could. But I also look at the call-ups for the forward part of it as well. I know people will be a little annoyed about some of the younger guys not getting their call-up, and I totally understand it. But I also look at it this way. Philip Hollander has not been bad. I don't want to sit here and pretend like he's been bad, but he hasn't really looked like a fit in the top 6 yet, or maybe even if at all. Time will obviously tell. The more opportunities he gets, the longer he tries, we'll find out. But right now, it doesn't seem to be that much of a fit right now. And with Danton Heinen, we have described him this way since he has been a Penguin all those years ago, is that he's never going to be a permanent fixture in the top 6, but you can put him there for a couple of weeks and it won't be a bad fit. He'll at least give you a little bit of production. So I look at it as they saw how well he was playing and went, you know what? He can be a Band-Aid in the top 6 for now while we figure out what we're going to do as guys like Raquel work their way back. Hollander does a good enough job. Looks like an NHL player, but we'll see about his true ceiling. And then when you lose a guy like Noel Acciari, Kevin Hayes is going to be able to step in and fill that same role. So I look at it as they saw the fit in what they needed right now, and that's how they made the decision to do these call-ups. So I don't think it speaks ill of the 2 young guys that everybody's excited for. You want to keep giving them top line minutes, power play 1 minutes down in Wilkes-Barre. And when the opportunity opens up in Pittsburgh for them to take on a similar role, then they will get their shot. Right now, you don't want to put them in the press box. You don't want to put them on the 4th line. You want to give them that opportunity to really make a difference, and that opportunity isn't there yet. Now, for Sergei Murashov, I think we're going to see a good bit of him over the next couple of weeks, because this isn't Tristan Jarry is going to be day-to-day, and we just need someone on the bench. We'll let Artur Shilovs take the bulk of the starts. This is at least 3 weeks, and you're going to have a lot of games to play over the next 3 weeks, because we know that this is a condensed season because of the Olympics. So they're going to play a lot of games over the next 3 weeks. And as much as I have liked Shilov's early effort, he's stumbled a little bit recently. You don't want to put the saddle on him just yet because he hasn't proved he deserves it. So I do think Dan Muse is going to keep with the rotation. We're going to see Murashov, and then we're going to see Shilovs, and then we're going to see Murashov. and then we're going to see Shilovs. And this is a massive opportunity for him because, as you said, everywhere he has gone as a starting goaltender, he has dominated. Now it's his time to prove he belongs in the NHL.
Right, and I don't think he is going to stick here for the entire year. I think he's probably going to go back down to Wilkes-Barre at some point, but this is at least an opportunity for him to, A, make his NHL debut, and B, show the organization, the fans, everyone involved with this team that he is coming. So I'm excited for these next few weeks. Wouldn't it be something, by the way, if his first career start was on Thursday against Alex Ovechkin? It would be really cool to see Dan Hughes do that. I'm not sure he's going to. I think the smart money is on Shilovs, but don't rule out Murashov playing against the Capitals. I think that would be a lot of fun. And then maybe they can go Shilovs against New Jersey and then Murashov against the Kings. That would be interesting. Or if you do want to do Shilovs and then Shilovs again and then Murashov on Sunday just to try to ease him into the NHL, I could also see that. So there's a whole bunch of different scenarios here. He's going to get at least one of these next 3 games, Pat. That's exciting. I'm hoping it's the one on Sunday just for selfish reasons because my fiance and I are going to the game and I would love to see him there start on Sunday. But, he has earned this. And after watching him during camp each day, watching him during the preseason, now I want to see what he can do for real against legit NHL players.
Very excited for him. This is a moment that a lot of us have been waiting for, and suddenly it's here. Suddenly he is on the NHL roster, and it's going to be on him to seize the opportunity like he has everywhere he has gone. But that is not going to do it for all of this discussion about the roster, about practice, and even the Penguins president of hockey operations, or if you were paying attention to the news last night, the newly elected mayor of Pittsburgh, Kyle Dubas. Sorry. I get them mixed up just like everybody else does. But we are going to keep this episode rolling, but we got to take a quick break. We'll keep that all going when we come back right after this. Before we do that, though, we've got to tell you about today's first sponsor, and that is Rougiet. Let's be real, making excuses, it doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that is where Rougiet comes in. Rougiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. They make it so easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, so you have none of those awkward waiting rooms experiences where you're avoiding eye contact and not wanting to talk to anybody. You do it all through your computer. And if prescribed, that treatment comes directly to your door in discreet packaging. The process is fast, simple, and private, and all handled by real doctors. It's all about confidence and getting back to those moments that matter so much. Visit rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL to get 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNHL so they know that we sent you. Rougiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. We're back on the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am Patrick Damp, one of your hosts, joined by the one and only Hunter Hodes. And not only is he the co-host of this very show, he is also a writer for the Hockey News. And that means today, Hunter went on a little bit of a field trip. He was at Cranberry for practice, and we saw a lot of movement in practice today, both via the lines and the defense pairings. So, Hunter, give us a look into what we saw today up at the Lemieux Sports Complex.
Yeah, so a lot of 5-on-5 drills, a lot of power play work, but they did also do some line rushes, and Pat, everyone is going to be excited to hear this news. If you have not seen it or heard about it yet, first-round pick Ben Kindle is going to get a crack next to Sidney Crosby and Brian Rust. Again, Philip Hollander was there for part of practice, but even during his part there, Ben Kindle was taking top line rushes. So it appears Dan Muse wants to make a little bit of a change there. I don't blame him. I think Hollander has been fine filling in for Raquel, but you see the way that Kindle is just carrying the third line. Why not try him up there with Crosby, especially with the way that he is playing in his own zone? The Crosby line against the Maple Leafs got taken to the woodshed in the third period. Austin Matthews clamped down on Sid. I thought that's the best job I've seen an opposing top forward play against Sid all season. Matthews just did not allow anything from Sid and his line in that period. And part of me thinks that's a little bit of the reason you're seeing the change here is because Ben Kindle, with how defensively responsible he already is with the hockey IQ that he has, the top line can be a bit better defensively. So I think that's part of the reason. Obviously, he's red hot right now scoring wise, but I do think part of it is because of his defense. So Ben Kindle was getting some line rushes with Brian Rust and Sidney Crosby. Very excited about that. He has very much earned it. Tommy Novak with Evgeny Malkin and Anthony Mantha. We talked about it before the season, Pat, where, Novak, he has the ability to play up in the top six. He can play wing. So we might see this on Thursday against the Capitals. You also saw, Ville Koivunen still on the third line with Philip Tomasino. Danton Heinen was on that line. And then the fourth line, Hollander again was there before he left. But then you mostly had Kevin Hayes with Blake Lizotte and Connor Dewar. So I expect Hayes to kind of take that Achari spot on the fourth line unless they're going to give it to Heinen or something like that. And then defensively, same pairs for the most part: Weatherspoon, Carlson, Shea Letang. Yeah, Dumba with Brunick, Graves, Clifton. Brunick is still there. Dan Muse confirmed after practice they have not made a decision either way on if he is going to go back to Kamloops or if he is going to stay here. But the fact that he is still here right now, that, it's optimistic that he will stay here, but I'm still not 100% sure at the same time. We could see an announcement after we're done recording, Pat, because that would be just our luck that he's going back to Kamloops. We don't know. But as of right now, he is still with the Penguins. And then, of course, you saw Murashov at practice, Archer Shilovs, all that. But those are some of the lines and the pairings that at least Kelsey and I saw because we were there at practice together.
Yeah, I look at the Kindle, and we had the Brunick discussion yesterday. No need to rehash that. We made our thoughts pretty clear about what we think might or might not happen with Harrison Brunick. But I look at the Kindle promotion, and I just hope that at least if it comes out and goes really well on Thursday against the Capitals, you keep it together. But I don't want them to load up too much because we have seen throughout this season so far that Dan Muse has no misgivings about rolling lines. He's got no issues rolling 4 lines throughout the course of a game. But if you take him off of that third line center role, you're suddenly a little bit thin at forward. And now part of the other issue I look at it with this, though, is you need to find that third winger or that third member of the first line with Crosby and Rust, because as much as I like Hollander's game, as much as I think there is some untapped potential there, the early returns since Raquel got hurt have not been great with him on the top line. It doesn't mean that he's bad. It doesn't mean that he's not playing well. He just doesn't seem, at least at this moment, to fit with that duo. Now, I love Ben Kindle's hockey IQ. He never seems to be out of position. He's got good offensive instincts. We'll see if he has the ability to elevate that first line. And if that's the case, totally cool with keeping that line together. And I don't want to sound like I'm overstating or overvaluing Danton Heinen. He is totally fine, but he does strike me a lot as a Mr. Fix-It kind of forward, where you can drop him into that third line with Tomasino and Ville Koivunen, and he's not going to suddenly make that line bad. And maybe he can stabilize Tomasino and Koivunen a little bit, even though that I don't think Koivunen's played poorly, but he is an all business kind of no nonsense kind of forward. And you put them together and you put him with a group on a line, you can get by with it. So overall, I mean, I look at the way the lines went in practice, and I don't know if I would call this the ideal, but I think there is a good amount of potential there as you head into your matchup with the Capitals.
Yeah, and with Heinen, I think he's a totally fine bottom six forward. I think he was just a victim of a numbers game. I didn't think his camp was bad or anything. There were just a few other players that outplayed him. And, he went to Wilkes-Barre, understood the assignment. He dominated down there and he earned a call back up to the main squad. So, assuming he gets back in, potential bottom six role. He did play a little bit during training camp with Evgeny Malkin and Justin Brazeau. He's also rotating with Anthony Mantha. So maybe you could see that for a little bit. I hope people don't freak out, but in a bottom six role with some injuries going on, you could do a whole lot worse than Danton Heinen to me. So those are really my thoughts on that.
One other thing I want to get to before we get to Warrior Helmet Wednesday, which I think most people might have an idea of who we're handing the Warrior Helmet out to this week, but stay tuned for that, is Penguins president of hockey operations, Kyle Dubas, did sit down when the team was in Toronto with the Athletics' Pierre LeBrun, and he talked a lot about a lot of things from his time in Toronto to what he's looking forward to being on the staff for Team Canada going into the Olympics. But we want to focus here mainly on what he had to say about the Penguins. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because a lot of it, especially about the Penguins, was mostly things that we had already known about the way he looks at this organization, where he wants to take it, and so forth. But there was one part at the end of his comments that I wanted to highlight, and it is about the captain, Sidney Crosby, because even with this good start that the Penguins have had, people still got to have their takes, and it's friggin' exhausting, but let's get into it. So basically, they ask him about what's up with Crosby's future, in the future with the organization, and he basically gets asked, would you approach him about a potential trade? And Dubas says, quote, "No, I would never. He's got 2 years, this year and next, on his contract. And I just think that if we continue to take the right steps and we continue to win, that's the great solution to everything in sports. Just have to win." I want to editorialize really quickly on Dubas's comments. Here's the thing. Yes, winning cures all. It's the best antidote for literally everything in sports. But I will say this. Crosby isn't dumb. I think he is seeing that there is a lot of young talent in this organization that he not only is going to have to mentor, but also is going to make a difference. Ben Kindle has been a revelation all season long. He has looked fantastic. A lot of the other younger players have been making their mark both in the NHL and in Wilkes-Barre. And I think with Sid, he looks at it as, I can not only be the mentor for this group, I can be the leader, and they will help me get back to the postseason. So I think both him and Dubas see that, and it's really going to quash internally a lot of this talk about sending him off to some other contender for him to chase another ring.
I agree. And it's also just such a non-story still. Like they're playing well for the most part outside, of that awful third period against Toronto. They're still 8-4-2. They're basically at the top of the Metropolitan Division right now. You knew Pierre was going to ask about it just because, national media, you have a chance to sit down with Dubas, you have to ask him about it, but it's still honestly such a non-story to me. Nothing is going to happen. That's all I really want to say.
Yeah.
And you can tell how much fun he's having this year, Sid, that is. You can tell how much, the youth, especially Kindle, is just, just going off him. It's been phenomenal.
And I will say this about LeBrun. He doesn't dabble in hot takes. He is a very good reporter, but he has to ask about this because whether or not it's a story or not, it's the most interesting thing surrounding the Penguins is their longtime captain going to go somewhere else. Even if we all know it's more unlikely than it is likely, you are not doing your job if you don't ask the question and get him to answer. So I don't begrudge him for asking the question, even if it still is just ridiculous on its face. But wanted to get to that real quick. It's a really good interview. There is a whole lot in it. If you have an Athletics subscription, check that out. Give it a read. A lot of really good comments from Penguins president of hockey operations, Kyle Dubas. And now it is the time that Hunter and I have been waiting for. It's Wednesday. That means it's time for us to give out our MVP of the week as part of Warrior Helmet Wednesday. So stay tuned and find out who is going to get this week's Warrior Helmet right after this. But before we hand out our MVP, it's time to tell you about our final sponsor of the day, and that is FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you just want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a bigger shot at a bigger payout. It keeps everything exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when their first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, we're back here closing out the Wednesday edition of Locked On Penguins. I'm Patrick Damp, right alongside Hunter Hodes. And it is once again Wednesday. That means it is time for us to hand out our MVP of the week. And if you are new to us here on Locked On Penguins, this is us paying homage to the 2016 Stanley Cup winning Pittsburgh Penguins. During that season, in the locker room after the game, the players would give out their MVP of a winning effort with a Warrior helmet. They did that all the way through their Stanley Cup championship in San Jose. So what we do here is we pick the best player of the previous week for the Penguins. Doesn't always have to be a player, though. It can be a coach, can be a general manager. Hell, it could even be you, the fans. But this week, Hunter, it was a pretty easy pick for Warrior Helmet Wednesday. And both of us are making that same pick. The winner of today's Warrior Helmet is none other than first round pick Ben Kindle. A solid week for him with the Penguins, 3 goals in 3 games. He currently has 5 goals, and that's all he's got. No assists yet in his NHL career, but 5 goals. And he has looked absolutely tremendous for the Penguins over the past couple of weeks, exceeding all expectations and looking like a full-time NHL player.
Oh, 100%. And, he's scoring goals in different ways, though, over the last week. 3 goals in the last 2 games, the one against the Minnesota Wild, right place, right time on the power play. First one against the Maple Leafs, gets a little bit of a lucky bounce in front of the net. And then he unleashes a beautiful one-timer off a great pass from Evgeny Malkin later in that game against Toronto. He continues to get better and better in each game that he plays. He is dominating teams on a nightly basis. His line is going out there against some of the top lines in the league, some of the top players in the league. And not only is his line holding his own, he and his line are dominating those players. He had Kirill Kaprizov in hell last week. Even against Winnipeg, now that third line was the Penguins' best line. Against Toronto, I feel like that line was, again, the Penguins' best line. This is on an every game basis now. And yeah, he's going to be up on the top line, it looks like, with Crosby and Russ, but I still don't think it's going to be a full-time thing. I imagine when Raquel comes back, Raquel's probably going to reclaim his spot and they'll put Kindle back down to the third line, which will be great for depth purposes, but he has earned a promotion with the way that he has played over the last week. The way that he is able to get back and defend against scoring chances has been also great. I just think his all around, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I just think his all around game is fantastic right now. And he's doing stuff that you just don't see 18-year-olds do in the NHL that were picked outside of the top 10 in their draft year. It's crazy, man. But he very much deserves this. Congratulations to him.
Yeah, it's been a big week for him in just a really good season so far. Here's the hope, and it keeps up. Let's take a look at our tally for Warrior Helmet Wednesday so far this season. Ben Kindle moves into a tie with Justin Brazeau for 2 Warrior helmets on this season. And if you're checking us out on YouTube, you can see the graphic. But for those listening on audio, the other players who have gotten our Warrior helmets so far this season: Sidney Crosby, Kyle Dubas, Evgeny Malkin, recently called up Sergei Murashov, head coach Dan Muse, and goaltender Arturs Shilov. So we are going to keep that tally all season long. And at the end of the season, we will give out our season-long MVP and our Warrior helmet for the 2025-26 Pittsburgh Penguins season. But Hunter, unless you've got anything else to add, I think that is going to do it for the Wednesday edition of Locked On Penguins. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. We will be back on Thursday with a preview of Penguins Capitals, so stay tuned for that. But for now, for Hunter Hodes, I am Patrick Damp. Thank you again for tuning in, and we will talk to you on Thursday.